Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So a couple quick announcements. They wanted me to let you guys know that Verizon is shooting today. They're shooting a day in the life video of me. I have no idea why, but I'm glad you guys asked me to come, because otherwise they'd be sitting watch me get on Twitter all day. So, but if you desire not to be on camera, just let me know, and I will make a point to walk over to you to make sure that you're on camera. Thank you for those kind words. I don't know about the excavator comment, but I didn't even have breakfast this morning, so I don't know where the giant excavator thing came from. But let's get started. So first, let me make sure. Shoot. So I got my one iPhone. I got my other iPhone. My iPad. Do you guys see my wireless, my MiFi? It was up here. So I have a Verizon MiFi pack. It's up here somewhere. Oh, here it is. But then I need one more thing. It's my pen. Sorry, I needed my pen. So let me tell you a little story. So I've been in touch with this organization for about a couple of months now. And when they asked me to come speak, it put the idea of literacy kind of front and foremost in my mind. So I've been thinking about you guys a lot and thinking about this conversation. And as E said, I'm a strong advocate for digital literacy. And once we started having the conversations, I realized how many parallels there were in those challenges in that quest. So it's been in my mind. I've been traveling. I literally just got off a plane about a half an hour ago from Ohio, the Black Enterprise Entrepreneurs Conference. But I was walking through the airport, and I like to put myself in other people's shoes. So I was walking through the airport, and I tried to imagine what it would be like walking through that same airport if I could not read, right? The things we take for granted, like this morning I really had to go to the bathroom. I just did, right? Searching for the restroom, finding those signs, trying to find something to eat really quickly, trying to find my gate. And I took a step back and said, what would that be like if I could not read? Because when I normally go through the airport, and I go through my travels, I always think about the digitally unconnected, right? So another example of that is today, I had a car service that was supposed to pick me up so I could get here on time so that Kim wouldn't have a heart attack because she was afraid that I wasn't going to make it. When I walked down to the baggage claim, they weren't there. So I looked at the clock. I said, what am I going to do? I pulled up my phone, and there's a service called Uber. That you can go on, you can grab a car service, a taxi, et cetera. I press the button, 2 minutes later, the taxi pulls up, I get in, and I'm here. And I think about those things because I always think about the people who don't know about those services, right? I always feel like I'm a step ahead, whether it's going to the movies, whether it's transporting myself, whether it's getting information, then I'm a step ahead. And I always think about the people that are digitally unconnected. But now I think about it in terms of people who aren't literate, right? And I think what I want to talk to you guys about today, and we'll run through it, is how we're going to make technology the new norm. So, E kind of gave you guys a little bit of my background. I've been at Radio 1 for about 2.5 years. Before that, I co-founded a internet startup with Russell Simmons called Global Grind. Before that, I was at BET for 6 years. But at the end of the day, technology has taken me everywhere. I've met people, I've interacted with people in various backgrounds, various states, and it's allowed me to cross bridges and have opportunities that if technology didn't exist, I probably wouldn't have them. And then lastly, I always like to put up this slide so you see all the cool people I get to hang out with. So we live in a digital economy, if you haven't realized it yet. And I don't think sometimes that people understand the size of that digital economy. Online transactions, 10 trillion annually. That's not million, that's not billion, trillion dollars annually. 3.7 trillion annually were estimated to grow, and that was 2 years ago. These are old stats, so we're actually already past these numbers. I mean, huge numbers. By one estimate, American jobs related to the internet contribute to an estimate 300 billion of economic growth. Huge numbers. So in the area of digital literacy, it's needed for today's jobs. 96% of working Americans need to use communication technologies. 62% of working Americans use the internet as an integral part of their day. There's that $300 billion number again. And between 1998 and 2008, the number of domestic IT jobs grew by 26%, 4 times faster than the US employment average as a whole. By 2018, IT employment is expected to grow another 22% everywhere. So on top of that, technology is moving faster. Before 1998, there was no Google. I don't even know how we figured things out before 1998. Before 2002, there was no LinkedIn. You actually had to print out your resume. Remember that thick paper that you'd have to go buy at Staples? No one poked before 2004. We didn't even know how to find our friends before 2004. OMG, LOL, BRB. None of that before 2006. We only played words by ourselves before 2007. We couldn't play with our friends. Now this is a big one. Before 2007, there was no iPhone. I own 2. You can't go on a subway, a restaurant, anywhere without seeing those white headphones. You just can't do it. 2007 didn't exist. So this is another interesting one. So this company was created by the same guy who invented Twitter. And what Square is a little plastic device that you can plug into your phone and take credit card transactions 5 minutes later. No merchant account, no pre-approval, et cetera. They do close to $100 million in transactions a day. And another stat I'll give you is close to 70% of African-American businesses own businesses are still cash only, right? But they're still doing 100 million in transactions a day. Angry Birds. I know you have it on your phone. Don't try to hide it. $750 million in revenue last year. So every time you go like this on your phone, they're racking up that revenue. The Star Wars version made them $10 million in 3 days. Instagram. How did we ever use our mirrors before Instagram? I don't know. Built by 2 guys in 2010, bought by Facebook for $1 billion a year and a half later. So I show you all of these so that you kind of put in your mind how fast this technology is going to come into your life. These are all billion-dollar businesses, all of them. And the oldest one, 1998. Google actually just topped the $900 stock price last week. So a lot of opportunity. Now, when we think about those opportunities, let's start talking about society and our populace. So the one thing I want to mention to you guys is that as we've grown as a society, that the population growth in the last 10 years has been almost all ethnic. Here's a visual of what the population was by ethnicity from 1980 to 2010. The biggest shift is in Hispanics and African Americans. So the census predicts that by the year 2040, people of color will be in the majority. So before you guys all run out saying we are free, we're taking over, knocking things over, let's just slow down. So, and let's pause here for a second. So what I've shown you so far is that technology has coveted everything. Huge economic opportunity, right? We've seen things be incubated. You know, if you look at that slide of the growth of technology, correlate that to how fast it took the television industry to be $1 billion industry, how fast it took the radio industry to be $1 billion industry. We're talking decades. That in this IT track, the opportunity is in overabundance. So think about that as we go through the next few slides. So 2040, people of color will be in the majority. So let's look at where we are in 2013. and I'm going to focus on Philly. More than 550,000 adult Philadelphians are unable to meet the requirements for entry into post-secondary training or family-sustaining jobs. This is more than 1 out of every 2 people in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a city where 37% of the population drops out of high school. 77% do not have a college degree, and 22% of adults are considered low literate. There it is. About 65% of Philadelphia's 20 to 24-year-old dropouts are not working or in school. Yet the majority of them own smartphones. Currently, 28% of Philadelphians are living in poverty. So I focused on Philadelphia because that's where we are and that's where our focus is. But this model is illustrated in every city across the country. So where are we? We have a high economic growth sector. We have unlimited opportunity. And then we have subsectors within our cities that are in no way connected to them. They're in no way able to take advantage of that opportunity. So when you think about that year 2040, what could that really look like? That could look like a whole lot more of this. And here's the thing that people don't realize, right? A lot of people think that when you talk about issues in the inner city and you talk about issues of illiteracy and poverty, that's just an urban issue. But if by 2040 we're the majority, that's everyone's issue. Where are you going to find people to fill those high growth jobs? Where are you going to find the economic growth to sustain your business? Who's going to buy from you if these numbers exponentially increase by the number of people? It's an issue that affects everybody. And this is an issue, there it is. So from a technology side, it's not much better when it comes to minorities and people in the inner city. Only 1% of internet companies were founded by African Americans. Again, juxtapose that with all the data that I've showed you, all those dollar amounts, all those companies, 1%. Nearly 1/3 of US households, 32%, lack broadband service. So they can't even take advantage of all the great products we just saw. And when you talk to people about why they don't have it, here's one of the biggest myths in the world. It's not cost. It's that they don't see the value in having the service. There's a disconnect. And in Philly, in-home tech availability, 41% of people in Philly are without any internet. Sorry, it was an early flight. There's a text missing there. So, some of you might be saying, well, what does that have to do with me? I teach literacy education. Maybe he's in the wrong room. But it actually has a lot more to do with you than you realize. Because if people aren't literate, they can't become digitally literate. And if they can't become digitally literate, they can't take advantage of all the things I've just shown you. They are left out and will continue to be left out. So your role is actually exponentially more important than you may have even realized. You're the building blocks. You're the foundation. So let's go through that a little bit. So what do we need to do? So about a year ago, like E said, I was in a year and a half ago, I was in a CNN documentary. And post that documentary, I was invited to speak at a lot of different places. And I would get 2 types of calls. I would get, hey, we'd like to pay you to come speak. I'm like, that's great. I'll be there. I'm not going to turn that down. But then I would get some other calls. I would get other calls where people would say, hey, I really think our group needs to hear what you have to say. We can't pay you. We can't even give you your travel, but we really need to get there. So I found myself taking those calls and starting to do those talks. And what I realized was that the people who are paying me, why I appreciate the pay, and if anyone here is willing to pay, I'll be in the back after. But the talks I was having with the groups who couldn't even afford to bring me there were more impactful because they were the people who needed to hear the message, because no one was going to those environments and letting them know the opportunities that were right in front of them. So when you talk about, so from that, I created an organization called Close the Divide, the Close the Divide Project. For the last year and a half, I've been going around the country having those conversations in places that people haven't been having those conversations to create what I call light bulb moments. Giving people the information they need to start making the decisions and start realizing that there's a lot more opportunity ahead of them, giving them visual representations of success. So, I didn't call it close the digital divide for a reason, because I actually believe that there are fundamentally multiple areas in our life that there's a divide that we need to close. So today we're going to talk about closing that literacy divide and how technology can help with that. So, remember I said you guys are fundamentally important to this. Because what happens if you don't win? If you're not able to do your job, if you're not able to encourage the numbers that we saw to become literate, then we all lose. We see lines like this. I was at an event for the mayor a couple of weeks ago over at the Navy Yard. And coincidentally, there was a job fair going on about 2 buildings down at the same time. The line was 1.5 miles long. Lines like this all over the world of people trying to get employment, trying to sustain their families, trying to sustain their lives, not having the skills. Why is this so important? Because we're losing. The chart up here shows you unemployment by ethnicity, red being white Americans, green being Hispanic, black and blue. Blacks and Hispanics' unemployment rate is always exponentially higher than the national average. That's been consistent. This was from 2010 to 2011. It's actually worse now. But at the same time, there's a huge opportunity. Because remember, I showed you those growth numbers. The current populace that's involved in that environment can't sustain those growth numbers. So we have a huge demographic that's not tapped into a huge opportunity. So what does that allow us to be able to do? We can empower a whole generation. We can create economic parity for people who have lost hope in the ability that they could ever have it. We could create opportunities, new ideas. We could give birth to things that can change the world. Yeah, I'll tell you, I'll bring up these stories now. So I knew 2 guys when I was growing up. Well, I knew more than 2 guys. I had some friends. I didn't want you to think I wasn't popular. But 2 guys. One guy could take the top off a bottle cap. He would scratch it against the curb in a certain way, and we could make free phone calls. To this day, I don't know how he did it. He could figure out how to make indents in the bottle cap to match a quarter, and we'd make free phone calls. Another guy, when cable first came out, opened up the box, and 2 minutes later, we were watching, they were watching illegal cable. No engineering background, no prior experience. Neither of those guys, I couldn't tell you where they are today, probably never finished school, et cetera. Those are 2 of probably millions, thousands, hundreds of millions of people in the environments that we know that have those same skills, who are locked in a box. So, in order to start fixing this, we have to change what I call the perception divide. So, this is what I believe is an illustration of mainstream America's perception of opportunity in the United States. If I don't know where something is, I can do a Google search for it. I can pretty much find, solve a problem by looking online or going on Twitter, right? I can pretty much solve any problem. This is the view of perception of what I believe minorities in urban America, right? So focused on survival, so focused on getting by day to day, no one has ever come to them and helped them widen their perception of what's available and what's out there. So normally, in my presentation, I'd stay right here. And I'd say that the challenge with this is that when your perception is so narrow, there can be opportunities to the immediate left and right of you and you'd never see them. But when I started thinking about your challenge, I actually thought that there was another level. Because if I'm not literate, it looks like this. Nothing. I couldn't even begin to connect with the opportunities. I wouldn't even know how to start because I'm struggling through just how to get through the day. So, how do we change this perception divide? Well, first we have to be honest with ourselves about what the perceptions really are. So, the first one is that there is a perception that African Americans and Hispanics just aren't good in technology. They just don't care. Yeah, they'll use it. They'll have a phone. They may tweet, they'll text. But they don't really care about the inner workings. They don't want to be involved. The other thing is that technology is continuing to widen the education gap every day. In environments where technology is used, students are flourishing. In environments where technology is not used, students are degrading on a daily basis. And lastly, if a child is not technically literate, they will literally be unemployable. So, the reason why I say we have to be honest with ourselves is because if we're not honest with ourselves, then we can't come up with plans to counteract it. So here's an example. So this photo is from a New York Times article, Sunday New York Times article about, I think it was about 6 months ago. And the article was talking about integrating technology into schools. Now, I don't know about you, but she looks really confused. And he doesn't look like he's having the best day either, right? But if you're not in the environments that you're in, if they're not dealing with the things that you're dealing in your day-to-day job, and this is the first impression you get as reading the Sunday Times, that helps promote that perception. This is a photo from the same article. Kids are happily hopping along digitally in their lives. Same article. We have a perception problem. And if you think about that perception problem, that if mainstream America is being fed the perception that minorities don't value technology, and if minorities are getting their inferences from mainstream America, they're led to believe themselves that they shouldn't value technology, that there's no need for it in their lives, that it's not for them. I do a lot of talks with high school kids, middle school kids, and I usually start off and say, hey, there was a guy in a dorm, eating dorm food, using free software, that in 5 years he was worth more than Puffy, Jay-Z, Russell, and anybody else you could throw on a bus. 90% of the times, if I'm in an urban environment, I ask, who is that? No one knows what I'm talking about. And then I say, how many of you guys have a Facebook account? They all raise their hand. So they know the products, but no one's articulated to them the pathways to building those products, right? No one said to them that, you know what, there's been companies that have been birthed off of Facebook. Zynga was created off of Facebook. There's hundreds of others. There are thousands of others created off of Facebook. So you don't need to build a Facebook. You need to just understand it and create a company on Facebook. No one's giving those children that perspective. So that's like light years away from them. So let's talk about the two views of teen perception. So on the left, your left, this is from an article that Fast Company ran called The App-Prentices. These are 5 kids ages 13 to 18. They all built apps for fun. Some of the responses was, hey, it was really cool to see people downloading my app. It was something fun to do in my free time. I might build another one. Each person that